Hello everyone and welcome back to the Utah Film Pod. My name is Josh Terry, and speaking of welcome back, Danny Hatch is with me again. Welcome back, Danny.
Finally! Oh, I missed this so much. I'm so glad to be back here again.
I miss talking to you.
I miss talking to you too, and I miss talking about movies. I feel like I might be verbal vomiting a little bit today because I just have all these pent-up ideas. I'm like, I've needed to talk about films with people.
That will make two of us because and don't think of this as entirely your fault because this isn't a matter of just movies that have come out while you've been gone, but good grief, there are so many movies to cover today. And, and I'll explain a little bit more for our audience in a second. But first, why don't you tell us a little bit about what's been going on? How did things go?
Yeah, no, it's been a crazy semester, for sure. And honestly, it was really hard for me to say I would have to put this on hold. But I don't know how I could have juggled this and making a short film this semester. And the short film was a part of a class of mine. So, like, there's very strict time restraints with that. And
yeah.
Fortunately, being a college student, you have a lot available to you. So for my entire crew, I recruited my fellow film students, and they were fabulous, and rented equipment. So it was such a weird experience, feeling like this little kid playing with big toys. This little child telling people what to do and like printing out paperwork and making phone calls and all that sort of stuff. Like it was so bizarre to do something of that kind of caliber, but it was a great experience. It was a great learning experience because, I mean, it's still a student film, so it's not quite perfect, and watching it sometimes pains my soul a little bit, but I'm also very proud of it, and I think it's a good story, and I'm hoping to put it out into festivals and stuff like that. That's the objective of the class, so it's something that I do feel proud showing off, and
nice.
Yeah.
So what's the elevator pitch for it? What's it about?
So, basically, it's kind of this live-action adaptation of The Sneetches by Dr. Seuss.
Okay.
I was just feeling really strongly during this time of brainstorming about that story and the importance of respecting differences and conformity and discrimination and, those kind of ideas.
Yeah, right.
And I love the style, so we kind of did these hand-sewn yellow t-shirts with stars and with these stitches to kind of represent the us versus them dynamic. And I know my sister had been feeling that same way, and I felt like I could confide with her, like, those deeper meanings. And so she starred in it, but she lives out in Virginia. She's studying acting in Virginia right now.
Okay.
And so she flew out on a red-eye Sunday night, and then we filmed basically all day on Monday, and then she flew out that night to go back to school, to go back to like her performances and everything. So
wow.
I was really grateful for that. But
yeah,
I think that was something that kind of hurt, something that I learned. It's like, for any those film students out there, definitely get so much footage. Like, it's better to have more footage than be lacking, and I think that was something that kind of hurt a little bit, but considering what we had, I think we got something good anyways out of it. But
nice.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's got to feel tremendously better.
Oh, yeah, I'm finishing up the editing today and then submitting it today, so it will be finalized, which is crazy.
Nice.
I won't be picking at it anymore.
Oh, for sure. Well, for now, because if George Lucas has taught us anything, it is that the work is never truly finished. You're going to inject some bad CGI and some revisionist storytelling, and the one Sneetch is going to shoot first instead, and it's all going to go downhill.
Oh, I'm taking notes right now.
I'm just telling you, be ready. I'm just saying, be ready. All right. Well, so in the midst of all of this, then, this almost feels a little bit mean for me to even ask. But have you been able to see anything in the theater, or even streaming or anything in the meantime?
Not really, not much.
No.
But
And that's
you
what
know,
I say. Like I'm pretty sure that was going to be the answer, but I might as well. We
no.
got to find some way to segue here. So.
Oh, for sure, for sure. No, but something I learned not just with the filmmaking process, but also just my relationship with entertainment as I was so focused is something you've talked a lot about, where it's like the critic is there to help people know which movies they want to spend their money on if they can only go to so many movies in a
Yeah.
certain span of time, right? And so, I was still listening to the podcast. I miss this podcast so much, and I think you did a fabulous job keeping it going.
Oh, thank you.
But something I really appreciated with your reviews is, like, hearing about all the films. I'm like, you know what? Dune is probably the film that I would enjoy the most. And so we had this rare date night opportunity. We had some ticket vouchers we were able to cash in, and we went and saw Dune in theaters. And
Oh, nice.
I think you were
So you
totally
did see
right.
something.
I did see something. Hooray!
Oh, good. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I think you were so right that it was a great film to see in theaters with the sound. I did want to ask you something though, because I
Yeah.
don't know if this was just because
Shoot.
of the theater I went to, but did you have a hard time hearing what the people were saying? Like, it sounded as if one of the speakers might not have been working in the theater, or maybe the sound mixing was bad.
Yeah, I don't remember having sound problems, but
Okay.
I do remember the movie being very Hans Zimmer-ish, because he's the one who did the
Yeah.
score, right?
Yeah, I
And
think so.
and isn't he also the one who does all the Nolan scores? And so who
And
also
Nolan's kinda
has a
hard to hear
reputation.
that stuff.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I hear that complaint about Nolan quite frequently. And from what I remember about Dune, I don't remember struggling to follow what anybody was saying, but I remember it having that very distinctive kind of heavy. I'm not even sure what the technical term would be, but I don't know that it would be a speaker problem so much as a source style choice issue.
Okay.
Would be my guess.
Okay, no, that's totally fair. I also think the theater, it wasn't necessarily, the nicest setup there, so
And that could
I
be
wouldn't
it,
be
too.
surprised if, that kind of played a factor. But it was just such a bummer, because, I really liked the world building. I love prophecy kind of stuff. It gave me Arrival kind of vibes, where it's playing into that whole, knowing things will change what you're doing in
Yeah.
the present moment. I
Well,
loved
which
that.
is logical, right? Because it's the
Oh,
same
totally.
director.
Is it? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Oh yeah, no,
Oh.
the same guy, Denis Villeneuve. He's the one who
Yes.
did Arrival. He did Blade Runner 2049, and now he's doing the Dune movies.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. See, I think I started tracking directors a little bit after that time. So,
Ah.
because I knew him from that and from this short that I watched in one of my classes. And,
Okay.
I mean, he's fantastic. So,
Yeah.
yeah, no, directing was beautiful and just,
so-
it was such a fun experience.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question about it. So,
Please.
So, what was your background with the source material? Had you read the book? Had you seen the David Lynch movie? Any of the because I think there's even a TV miniseries version about 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I knew nothing about the source material. And in fact, I wasn't even gonna go see
Okay.
it, because it's it felt like more of a fan kind of movie.
This is why I was asking, and I guess this is
Yeah.
my more pointed question for you, was the sense that I got was that if somebody came into the movie without having read the book or seen the other movies, that they still were able to explain things in a clear enough way that they were able to make the complex plot easy to follow. So
Yeah,
what did you
no,
think?
I think that's what I remember you saying then, and that's why I felt safe going to see it, because I had family members who are like, I was so confused and all that stuff. But considering the other kind of movies they watch, I think they like to have things a little more straightforward, and I like the subtleties and everything. And like I said, the world building was fantastic. So
Yeah.
I think it totally did. I was able to follow. maybe not as well as someone who read the books, but like, you pick up on certain tropes, oh, this is the hero kind of character, this is the mentor kind of character, and
Yeah.
you're able to piece things together, and you're still able to grasp those new items that were really fun. And if
Yeah.
anything, I think the movie got me really excited about the whole franchise, where I was wanting more. And for me, I think that's always a good sign with a movie, is when I'm wanting more, I want to see it again.
Yeah. Oh,
And
for sure.
so I started listening to the book, actually, because of that, because I wanted to know more. And I think what you said about Rebecca Ferguson, like, totally, because I'm still in that part where you're setting up a lot of stuff with the mom, and man, she was fantastic. Like, having that comparison now, like, man, it just, like, made me appreciate it even more. So I think that's a good thing, where, bringing it back is kind of, I feel at least, discovering kind of this lost treasure, and I've really enjoyed it. So
Great. Well, so
I'm
if
looking
you,
forward to seeing more.
well, that's what I was going to say. Like, if I don't want to ruin your new passion, but if you do want to go back and check out the David Lynch version, I would be
Spoil the rest
fascinated
of
to
it.
know.
Okay.
Well, no, because I actually enjoy that one, but
Yeah.
as somebody who didn't grow up loving the original book, and I think that's why I can appreciate it, is because I had no previous foundation, and so I kind of went in, and it's like, because it's this really weird, very David Lynch cornball, like, I'd almost say wait until part two comes out from the new one, see that, enjoy it in its kind of its pristine, that, read the book, and then once the dust settles, you still have to have the Lynch experience. And
For sure.
in episode 175, we'll break down your reaction to the David Lynch version. But anyway, no, I'm glad you're able to see it, because that one, this new one is definitely one of my favorite movies this year. And
Yeah. No, it was definitely different. I loved that.
yeah,
Because something I do want to touch on a little bit later is just how, like, movies were fine this year, I think. But there were so few that, like, wow, they did something. They made a movie here, instead of just like, oh, well,
Yeah.
this was something that was going to come out, and now it's
so
here.
that is I think that's a great comment to kind of lead into our next little phase of the episode here, because the way that I would describe it, and I think fine is a perfect term. Last year, there were a number of good movies that I saw. When I kind of had to do the whole blitz to get ready for the year-end vote, or whatever the equivalent was, because it actually happened in February. There were lots of good movies, but nothing that I felt like, oh, I want to buy this for my own collection.
Yeah.
Right? And that was kind of my
Yeah.
cutoff. I am happy to say that in spite of a rough road, that's not going to be the case this year. And so that might be the best way to lead in. So these are the movies that I call, these are the quote unquote prestige movies, the prestige reviews, the ones
Oh,
that are
yeah.
they're shooting for grandeur and awards, and there's kind of an almost calculated design where there's, okay, well, if we follow this formula and check these boxes, Oscar glory and Golden Globes are just, a few votes away, and they are totally not expected to be big money makers. They're not wide audience crowd pleasers. But there's tons of them, and
Yeah.
so because there's a almost it's weird, because on the one hand, like, the timing of the release is just specifically so they can barely qualify, and yet because it's become such a common practice, it seems like it's expected now that if you have a movie that has a performance or something that's going to be for awards contention, they're all saved to the end of the year. And so the long and short of it is that I have been trying to mine my way through a mountain of movies in the last month or so, that I will never completely get through. I mean, there's just no way,
No.
as a non-full-time movie critic, that I could even really scratch the surface of this stuff. But what I'm going to attempt to do for our episode is parse out what I have seen and at least give the people what they may or may not want as far as
Because
far
this
as
stuff will be like the most polarizing too, because like this is
yeah,
the
oh
kind of
yeah,
stuff where it's like either like you have to watch this because it's so important, it's so impactful, or it's like they're trying too hard and it makes you really uncomfortable, or
yeah,
or it's just going to be a difference of taste too, because we've got a lot of
very
like
much so.
biopic kind of stuff, right? And
Oh
so it's
yeah,
like if you're a fan of
oh yeah.
this, you might like, yeah.
So okay, so without further ado, then I have broken down the prestige reviews into four categories. All right.
Oh,
Um,
fabulous.
and the first one is the biggest category, and it's the awful rich people movies.
Uh-huh, we
Because
love to eat the rich, don't we?
oh my goodness, and well, it's so hard because on the one hand, these movies do seem to be kind of criticizing like the downside of wealth and fame and all this.
As they're played by ridiculously wealthy people.
Well, that both that and it's just the focus on it, right? Is the
Mm.
assumption that we want to see stories about famous wealthy people. And
Mm.
so okay. So let me jump in. So I've got four movies in here that that I think qualify. Maybe three strong ones and one that I kind of would just kind of shoehorn in here.
It's an honorable mention.
Right. The most obvious candidate here is House of Gucci.
Oh, yeah.
The Ridley Scott, I believe, and Gucci referring to the famous fashion brand from decades past, and it's still active today. So this movie is set about 40 years ago, and it follows the famous Gucci family behind the brand that you know and love. Maybe you love, I don't know. It's they're still active today. They've been around for decades and decades. And it follows Maurizio Gucci, who at that point was kind of the heir to the family business, even though he wasn't super interested in it. Adam Driver plays the character, and he meets a woman named Patrizia, played by Lady Gaga, and she comes from a very kind of comparatively blue collar type of world, and the whole story effectively follows her rise and fall as she meets and dates Maurizio. They get married. They eventually decide to kind of take over or get involved in the family business, and they accumulate great wealth. But of course, there's also manipulation and backstabbing and et cetera, et cetera. And for the sake of anybody who wants to see it, I won't tell you where it goes. I mean, if you have paid attention to the news, you might already know. But and actually, like on a positive way, it kind of reminds me a little bit of. Actually, there's a couple of these movies that remind me of this. Is Breaking Bad, where the the Bryan Cranston character, evolved over the course of the series, but only because he already kind of had certain things in place that enabled that devolution or that. So anyway, so that's kind of like the poster child for this awful famous rich people category. Lady Gaga does a fantastic job. Adam Driver does a fantastic job.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
One of the things that defines a lot of these movies, especially the ones in this category, is that the performances are fantastic. The movie's a little less so. The movies are still good. It's still, well produced, well put together, well directed, all that kind of thing. But just the stories just kind of leave me asking, so what? Like, well, okay, so we know that power corrupts, money corrupts, right? And people in power and with lots of wealth do awful things. And, so while it is a quote unquote good movie, it's still something that leaves me feeling a little hollow. And I would say the same for a couple other movies in this same category. So the other one, and this is the one I feel like I'm kind of shoehorning a little bit, Spencer, the biopic of Princess Diana, Lady Di, who died in the late 1990s, British princess. Princess of Wales, actually, I think technically. I could be wrong on that. Kristen Stewart plays Lady Diana, and fantastic job. Again, like a really, really great performance. She totally inhabits it. And the movie, though, super weird. I mean, it's basically this imagined scenario of how her Christmas holiday went prior to her death. And so not really so much a documented true story as just kind of the filmmakers imagining what she was going through at the time as she's kind of separating from Prince Charles and all this. Again, the performance is really good, but there's a surreal quality to it, especially with the soundtrack that just becomes, or the score that starts, just they're trying to portray the conflict and kind of the mental instability. Just like I said, another one of these ones where the performance is really, really cool. The movie, a lot less so. And since, the royals are super wealthy and all this kind of stuff, I put in this category. The Eyes of Tammy Faye.
I was wondering about that one, because that's another one where it's like the performance looks amazing. Yes.
And it's interesting because here the performance is very, very different. So Jessica Chastain plays Tammy Faye Baker, who was the wife / business partner of Jim Baker, who was kind of a famous televangelist, and they were kind of one of the the poster children for the whole making tons of money off of the faith of others. They kind of had like their Christian ministry that I think is kind of like loosely connected to some established faiths, but mostly served to make them a lot of money. And they got in trouble for it down the road. And Tammy Faye Baker is, very well known for just like this very over the top persona and look, and like specifically her eyes, which is why the movie's named, The Eyes of Tammy Faye, because just tons and tons of makeup and just kind of garish and crazy, and she's got kind of like this very, very energetic, bubbly personality that, so as a result, Jessica Chastain, her performance is basically spot on. I mean, I haven't, I'm
You don't
not
follow
well-versed
televangelists?
I don't follow televangelists any more closely than I follow the royals. So I only kind of have a surface knowledge here, but her performance is really good, but it's also very cartoonish because the character is very cartoonish. And so I think that there's a subtle difference between a performance that is a performance and a performance that is an impression. And both with Chastain and then Andrew Garfield, your buddy, he plays Jim Baker.
Yep.
So he plays her husband, and they're both such just kind of lively, like I say, kind of cartoonish characters that they're very memorable, but I almost want to take them down a peg just because they are so, enhanced. If that's a fair thing to say, but same type of deal. It's a rise of fall. They start off and Tammy Faye is growing up in poverty and just she's actually a child of divorce, and which at the time really kind of ostracized her, and so it's another she gets together with Jim Baker in college, and they get married, and they start their ministry, and they make all kinds of money and get in trouble, and so it's another rise and fall story.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, this is kind of interesting to me, this idea of impression where it almost like takes you out of it. It doesn't feel like you're watching real people, right? And I mean, that's the point, right?
Yeah.
But it kind of made me think today as I was prepping for this, and I don't know if this movie is going to be in this category, but being the Ricardos, was that in this list?
Oh, you're getting ahead of me. You're come on, you're spoiling the.
I'm sorry. No, but like, I mean, I think it's just interesting because like, thinking of that larger than life persona, like, Lucy, right? Because being the Ricardos is about that famous couple, the Ricardos in I Love Lucy, right?
Yeah.
And, when I was watching the trailer, it kind of felt like, they were, for sure doing the impression, like, as they're being filmed. But I think the trailer goes to show, like, a lot of, the actual person and not the persona. But I don't know if the film actually did that very well. If I wanted to pick your brain on that.
Now, the one movie that I would say is something that I would endorse as a this is a good movie, and I would be most happy to see get awards would be Being the Ricardos, which is
Oh, wonderful.
yeah, which is effectively the the story of Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, man and wife, famous couple that also plays a married couple in I Love Lucy on television years and years ago. The movie I want to say is set around 1960, after their kind of their rise to TV prominence and getting millions upon millions of viewers, and the primary narrative is follows them over the course of a week as they're preparing a new episode. And in the meantime, Lucille Ball has been outed as a member of the Communist Party, and so there's all kinds of backroom discussion about what actually happened, what's going on here, how do we respond to this, and because it's kind of McCarthyite, a lot of tension, Red Scare type stuff.
Oh yeah.
And then in the midst of that, there are a number of flashbacks to seeing where she started off not as a comedian, but just kind of as more of like the starlet type, looking for the starlet type roles, and could have been more successful with them, but then wound up kind of veering into more of a comedic and eventually a television career. And then meets Desi Arnaz and all this kind of thing, and so there are a lot of dynamics at work here where it's talking about female empowerment because Lucille Ball is such a powerful, she's so successful that she can really kind of call the shots and all this kind of thing, and you do see her in a non-Lucy Ricardo role, right? And so she's still the same person, but not the joke getter, right?
Yeah.
And so what you describe is very much in play. And Nicole Kidman plays Lucille Ball, and fantastic job. Javier Bardem plays Desi Arnaz, and also really, really good. And so again, it's another kind of one of these movies where it does leave me feeling a little empty at the end, because it's just kind of a drama about famous people dealing with one percenter challenges and stuff like this. But it's good enough. And Aaron Sorkin is the director and writer, and so of course it's got it's very dialogue driven, but in a good way. And so of those four, that's probably the one that I would recommend the most. Looking over it, I think all of these are rated R, mostly for language, and then with some scattered kind of like sexual content. So if that, if anybody's wondering about that, they all kind of fall into the same basic category. So yeah, so that's category one. Category two of the quote unquote prestige reviews is going to be the lowercase g good movies. Like these are good movies. I definitely enjoyed them. But probably a little bit more than category one, but maybe not quite to the point where they're really contenders in my heart.
But you don't hate the fact that you saw them.
Oh, absolutely. Like none of them are bad movies. The first one is The Tender Bar, which is based on a real life memoir, and directed by George Clooney. And it's kind of, so it's set in New England area, and it follows this boy who, I want to say I think this is again like the 70s, 80s. And he's growing up. He and his mom, like his dad ran off, and so he and his mom have to move back in with her dad and their family, and then their uncle, played by Ben Affleck, also lives with them, and he runs the bar around the corner, the neighborhood bar, but he's also kind of this scholar, and so the bar has a huge, like in among all of the bottles and spirits, there's a library, and so this little boy, he kind of gets introduced to literature and all this, and Ben Affleck is kind of his sage mentor, Obi-Wan type character, and so it just, I don't know, it's kind of the story of how he grows up. His mom wants him to go to Yale to become a lawyer, and he goes to Yale but winds up kind of obviously becoming a writer because his memoir is what the book is about.
Gotcha.
His character's name is JR because he's named like junior after his dad. And of course, the relationship with his father is kind of what drives the plot in terms of how is he going to resolve his past in order to pursue his future. And
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, no,
So
and
there's a very interesting plot there. Like,
no, and it's good. That's why I say
yeah.
like until more suspense here, but until I saw the movies I saw in the last 3 or 4 days, Tender Bar was basically my front runner for like Best Picture, even though it
Wow.
wasn't like, well, that's what I mean. Is it? I definitely liked it. I wouldn't want to purchase it, and it would be kind of a soft vote for Best Picture.
But it's more like, what else would you vote for?
Well,
Is
and that's
kind
kind of
of
the
the
problem.
feel up to this point, right? Yeah.
Well, and that's what has defined 2020 and 2021, honestly.
Yeesh. Yeah.
But then, so kind of leaning back into the famous biopic, based on a true story genre, King Richard is another one that
Yeah.
I watched, and of course Will Smith. This is his movie. He plays the father, Richard Williams, of Venus and Serena Williams, the famous tennis players, and so it's the story of how he raised them and brought them up in Compton, by Los Angeles, and kind of brought them out of this, really, really difficult circumstances, without the access to the money and the country clubs that your typical tennis prodigies have, but was able to kind of insert them into that world and get them the training, and then of course they became profoundly successful tennis players.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one thing I really appreciated about this movie was that it starts off, and especially when you see him on these courts in these local parks, and of course you've got gangbangers hanging out in the parking lot and stuff, and he's there with his daughters practicing in the middle of the night, and so it's obvious that it's like, oh gosh, this is such a, as a father, such a precarious situation, where because you want to protect your family, want what's best for them, and you're just in an environment which is dangerous. But rather than kind of stick with this, he's the heroic victim. You eventually see how he kind of becomes more of a problematic character, because he's very controlling. He kind of has his own idea for, this is how we're going to do this, and we're going to do it right. And even to the point where he kind of manipulates people around him. And so it becomes a very more dynamic and nuanced character, which I appreciated, because
cool.
it doesn't,
Yeah.
it shows him doing some really great things, but also shows that he's not anything like some kind of pristine, squeaky clean hero. And so I appreciated that. Now, the last one in this category, Licorice Pizza, which was written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. And so if you're a fan of his stuff, this kind of falls in line with that. This is basically this is a very loose story in terms of plot. It's basically a love story between a couple of late teens, early 20s kids in early 1970s California. And what's interesting about this one is that the boy, Gary, is played by Philip Seymour Hoffman's son, Cooper. And as you watch his performance, you get these little flashes of his dad, which are really kind of fascinating.
Interesting.
Alana Haim, I'm not sure it's Alana, plays the girl, who's also named Alana, so I guess I'm mispronouncing two different things. And so she's a little older. She's working for a school portrait company, and he's still in school, but he's a child actor, and so he's got all these ambitious entrepreneurial ventures, and he's starting businesses, and he's going out on acting jobs and stuff. And the two of them meet as kind of this quirky odd couple, where he's kind of chasing her, and she's kind of thinking, what is your deal? You're just kind of this weird kid who's a couple years younger and stuff. And the movie just kind of follows a few years in their lives as they're just kind of navigating the world of say 1973, according to IMDb. And it's like, I don't get the sense that it's explicitly based on a true story, but there are definitely true references.
Because it kind of plays off as if it is. Because what it reminded me a lot of was
Yeah.
Love and Mercy,
Oh, yeah,
with the Beach
right.
Boys and that kind of, like, it has that feel to it. So it feels like it could definitely be
It does, yeah.
epic.
Yeah. This one kind of, it, how would I describe it properly? Like I say, the plot is very loose, and the fact that it's not locked down kind of makes it feel like it's kind of dragging on a little bit at certain points.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a spectacular sequence in the middle with I'm just going to call it the truck sequence, and just for anybody who wants to see it. And by far my favorite character in this, and this is going to be one of my top votes for best supporting actor, is Bradley Cooper, who plays he basically is this character that's supposed to be Barbara Streisand's boyfriend at the time, and somehow Gary and Alana come across him, and he is just a nutcase. And Cooper plays him as just this kind of drugged out, sex addicted wacko who's somehow dating Barbara Streisand and will threaten your family in order to get you to do basically just nutso. And easily one of the most vivid performances I saw this year. And that's the thing I remember most about this movie. But then, like I said, just overall, just kind of a basic, kind of loose love story thing. So category 3 of the quote-unquote prestige reviews is kind of a grab bag of some of the foreign movies I've been watching, the documentaries I've been watching, even some animated stuff. And then also a movie that technically is not a foreign film, but my experience felt like a foreign film, and I'll explain more about that as I get there. So Flea is a film about a boy who leaves, I believe it's Iran. I don't think it's Afghanistan. I think it's Iran. And he winds up, his family has to leave kind of in the late 70s, early 80s. And what's interesting is that it is animated because they want to protect the identities of the people involved. And so it's an animated documentary, kind of dramatization of this man's story and how he eventually winds up in Denmark, and pretty cool one. So that one's like a documentary and a foreign film and an animated film.
They'll win all the Oscars.
Oh yeah, no, I mean it checks lots of boxes, and a
But
hero.
that's a cool way to use that form to
Oh yeah,
serve
no,
that
it
purpose.
is. It is. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't. It wasn't one of my favorite movies of the year, but I would definitely say it's one of the most unique. Now, A Hero is a purely foreign film that follows a man who gets out. He's a debtor. He's in a debtor's prison, and he owes a certain amount of money, and because he wasn't able to pay it back, gets put in prison. He gets out of prison, and his girlfriend and he come across some lost gold coins, and this kind of leads them into this opportunity where, okay, well, do I use this to buy my way to pay off my debt? Because he's given leave because he's kind of like this low risk prisoner. And it kind of leads into this local drama where basically they wind up giving the money back and then get celebrated as heroes, but then we find out that there's more to the story than they're letting on, and it's kind of this cultural examination drama type thing that's quite good. And so both Flea and A Hero are really good kind of foreign movies. Now, The First Wave is a documentary about the COVID response in New York City for the first few months of the pandemic in 2020. It's kind of a harsh right-hand turn in terms of the category, but really good documentary, and very, if you already kind of had a vague idea of what a lot of the first responders were doing and the nurses were dealing with, and doctors, this follows a couple of specific patients and a couple of specific workers, and really fantastic. Now, the one that I jokingly include here as a foreign film is The Tragedy of Macbeth, which is the latest adaptation of Macbeth, and this one's from Joel Coen of the Coen Brothers fame. And so certainly one of the most unique movies I've seen this year. Like visually, it's got like this square aspect ratio. I think it might be 4:3, and black and white. The sets are amazing. It's this very exotic looking kind of modern castle where instead of like the bricks and stones, it's all harsh lines and clean, and I don't know, it's very, I'm not doing it justice with my words here. Looks spectacular, really, really intense soundtrack, and the performances, I assume, are really good, because for the life of me, Macbeth is just one of those Shakespeare pieces that, I guess it undercuts my intellectual image, whatever it might be. But good grief, it's, like, wow, I'm not sure what's happening, but this looks really cool.
Yeah, no, I was taking this intro to drama class this semester, and like we were given feedback and everything, and I'm like, for the life of me, I just could not stand that Shakespeare unit. It was just really rough to get
tough.
through. Yeah, and we did multiple for that one, whereas like other ones we'd kind of jumped around, but I'm like, we could have just done one and checked it off the list. But my word,
yeah, well,
it's hard.
You get the sense, you get the sense that with this kind of thing, trying to follow it word for word is kind of beside the point, because it's the art of the words and the delivery and the imagery and the poetry of it. And so eventually you kind of, and maybe I'm just kind of speaking for the dumb people, but like I think you just kind of have to look at it with more, watch the movie more with a bird's eye view, and rather than parse each individual sentence, just basically kind of follow what's going on, and because that's basically what I wound up doing. And Denzel Washington plays Macbeth and brings his traditional weight and gravitas and all that, and Frances McDormand, who I believe is Joel Coen's wife, plays Lady Macbeth. I want to say Brendan Gleeson pops up in there, and so it's, like I said, the thing that stood out to me the most, other than the fact that it's so difficult to follow at a pure dialogue level, is just visually striking. And if it wasn't for another movie I'm about to talk about, it would be my number one cinematography movie for the year. But no, I mean, and in my defense, I totally loved Much Ado About Nothing back in the 90s with Kenneth Branagh and Emma Thompson.
It's fun.
That followed that very easy. Romeo and Juliet's always been pretty easy to follow. This one though, wow! Like I definitely need to be on top of my game, I guess, for that one. But so it felt like a foreign film, even though technically they were speaking English. So category 4 of my quote-unquote prestige reviews actually probably can drop the quotes, because I think these movies genuinely deserve accolades. They deserve the prestige. These are my best movies of the year, and even aside from at least within kind of the prestige category, because there are a couple other ones that I don't think are going to be contenders that are going to be my favorites. I think we'll talk about this in a future episode. But
for sure.
But as far as like I say, the kind of the prestige kind of Oscar hopeful movies, category 4, these represent my favorites, my bests, by a long shot. Yesterday, I watched Belfast online, which is kind of a semi-autobiographical piece by Kenneth Branagh about growing up in Northern Ireland during what I believe is the Troubles. It's the conflict between Protestants and Catholics in kind of 1969, 1970, and I believe that's the Troubles. And basically revolves around the story of his parents who were Protestants, but even though they weren't Catholic, they were still under pressure to kind of join this mob that was trying to cleanse the neighborhood of its Catholic residents. And his mom and dad are basically trying to decide, can we stay here? Is it time to leave our home? Not just our home, but our home country. Do we go to England? Do we go to Australia? You're seeing the violence and kind of the the dangers around them, but you're also following this little boy who, I believe is, like I said, I think it's kind of loosely based on his experience. I don't know if it's supposed to be literally a biopic type thing.
But it's something very personal for him, regardless.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But and so the movie's really good. The story's really good. The acting, et cetera, et cetera. But again, the visuals. Holy cow! This. I mean, and not just because it's black and white. Because black and white can be kind of an easy. Oh well, hey, it's going to be very prestigious if we make it in black and white. No, and that's why. You kind of second guess. And it's like, am I just buying it up? And here's where I have to kind of fall back on my photography background, because every shot in this movie, almost literally every shot in the movie, is this conscious, beautiful, crafted composition. And I'm thinking of this one that I'm going to try to describe it. Buddy is basically the stand-in for the Kenneth Branagh character. And he's this adorable little towhead kid, and we're seeing this world through his eyes, and part of his routine is to appeal to his grandfather and grandmother, who also live kind of with the family. And so at one point there's this, and it's a simple scene, like it's not a really dramatic scene, but I'm just staring at this with kind of goggle-eyed. On the far left, you have Buddy, who's just kind of sitting on, he's not using, he's just kind of sitting on like a community toilet. And so it's kind of like this little closet with the door open. And so he's just sitting on that while he's talking to his grandfather, who's kind of working on a saddle. He kind of just has this little stool out in the alley that he sits on while he works on saddles and other things. And so his grandfather's kind of in the middle of the frame. And then you look down the alley on the right-hand side of the frame, and his grandmother, who's played by Judi Dench, is kind of sitting inside the building, but by the window, so you can kind of see her looking out. And the composition of this is just awesome. Like, they're just kind of having this casual conversation because, I think, Buddy's trying to get advice for how to deal with his friends. He's got this girl he's got a crush on in class and stuff. But just even these kind of innocuous, forgettable scenes have this attention to detail. And so as good as the story is and the acting and the performances, for me personally, just the cinematography of this thing is gorgeous, just absolutely fantastic. And yet, still takes a distant second on my favorite movies of this list, because, and if we need to trim for time, we'll just trim everything but this one.
Sounds good.
On recommendation from Steve Sales, our guest from 2 episodes ago, I sought out CODA, which is an acronym that stands for Child of Deaf Adults. This one is only kind of sort of a prestige movie because it's been out for a while. I believe it was actually featured at Sundance at the beginning of the year. This is far and away my favorite movie of 2021. Not even a competition. And wow, just, it's one that, like, immediately, in fact, I think even before it finished, I was looking it up on Amazon to see if I could buy it, and it's unfortunately not available yet. So CODA follows the story of this teenage girl named Ruby, and it's played by Emilia Jones. And she is the only hearing member of her family. Both her parents and her older brother are all deaf. And so they all sign, and of course Ruby also signs because she effectively has to be the translator for the family as they work on their own fishing barge. They basically have a family fishing business. This is kind of another kind of New England coast type setting. And in the midst of this, Ruby discovers her passion for singing, and so she decides to go out for a position with her high school choir. She meets up with her teacher, played by Eugenio Derbez, who you might recognize from How to Be a Latin Lover from a few years ago. kind of a comedic actor, and really kind of fun here. But Marlee Matlin, you might recognize, plays her mom. her father, Frank, is played by Troy Kotzer, who I have not seen before, though he looks vaguely familiar. Anyway, so it's basically this conflict between this girl who loves to sing and can hear, still has this responsibility to her family, and how does she manage that? How do they decide whether to let her go and pursue her dreams because she's about to go to college and she wants to go off and pursue a singing scholarship, and the different elements in play here. And admittedly, so there are some personal connections that I made to this. Just because I have family with some hearing loss and different things, but then just like the spirit of kind of the singing and the vibe of this movie. There's kind of like this awkward humor kind of style that just kind of the embarrassing humor of real life warts and all type thing. It's, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to dig too deep into the different plot lines because this is
something you want everyone to experience.
Oh my goodness, yeah. And as a kind of a bonus, and I'm gonna mess up his name, Ferdia Walsh-Pilo plays kind of her singing partner / would-be boyfriend at school. This is the same actor who was in Sing Street a few years ago, which was another one of my all-time favorites.
Which I have to say, sorry, side note, because of the podcast, because of my viewing of it, my mom and my sister ended up watching it, and they said that was like their favoriteest movie ever. They love it so much.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
So I'm so glad you came back to this.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, because I really haven't, I think this is the first time I've seen him in something else since then.
Yeah.
And I even, after I saw him, and he plays an American, like he doesn't play, because he was, played an Irish character in Sing Street. I guess I just assumed he was Irish, but for a second I had to go double check and see if this was another John Carney movie, because again, kind of the theme of music and stuff. But it's so it's not John Carney, but it's got a lot of that same kind of
same vibe, kind of
that same spirit. And oh my goodness, just
yeah.
I can't recommend this enough. This one, for a variety of reasons, is my top gun for 2021. so I wanted to finish up on a this awful, sprawling, chaotic, incomprehensible breakdown of movies that and I'm sure there'll be more coming.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Oh, it was very interesting hearing you talk about those movies because, back to that whole idea of just fine. Like, I feel like I'm still searching out my Coda moment, really. Like, there are some movies I really enjoyed, but, coming up at the end of the year, I'm still hopeful. Now knowing what is coming out, I'm not sure if this is necessarily my year of, this is the movie that's going to be my new, top 3, right? I've been a little pressed for time these past few months, but also there are just a lot of movies where, I did have time this weekend where I could have seen maybe at least one of them, but I didn't have a lot of motivation for it because it did feel like maybe they're just pushing for the Oscar kind of, Oscar bait, quote unquote,
Right.
But it does sound like there are some good things to check out, so I'm really glad you covered them in that way. But I think for me, maybe I'm growing up and the magic of the Oscars is waning on me, but I loved watching the Oscars, and I'd have my favorite movies that I'd be rooting for, my favorite actors and whatever. And this year, that theme of everything's just kind of fine, or at least it's been fine so far.
Yeah.
But the things that have really stood out to me are more the subcategories, or the ones that no one's really caring much about. There's some stuff with visual effects, with cinematography, with sound mixing even. There have been some really high quality stuff. It's just, you asked me who my favorite actor was this year, my favorite actor performance, I couldn't tell you. Or supporting roles, I don't even know what I'd pick for the top film of the year, but it seems like there are some stuff coming out.
Well, it's going to be Coda.
I just need to catch up. It's going to be Coda.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to put money on it right now. Not to sway your opinion before you see it, but I'm guessing that you're going to like West Side Story a lot. And so if I had to put money on it, I would probably say that's probably going to be your number one pick based on what I'm hearing so far.
Yeah. I think my pick so far would be something kind of like In the Heights.
Oh,
So
that's right.
maybe,
Yeah.
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 So that
And see,
might
I
be
did not see that one.
a
But
shame.
it's I
It's okay. I might not get around to Coda this year, so
well,
I'll
it's,
try. I'll try.
your
Well,
life
here's
is
the
you're just
interesting
going to be
thing.
unfulfilled until you do, is what I'm saying.
Well, here's what I'm wondering with Coda, and this was kind of the talk last year that was kind of like maybe this will hurt potential Oscar winners, but the whole being released on a streaming service, because this is Apple TV, isn't it?
Yes, that's a good point. I want to say that it was still playing, and might still be playing at the Broadway.
Okay.
So I think it does have.
It has like official theatrical release to it. Because
Yeah,
is that still the rule? Because I wasn't sure if they changed that or not. Because there are some things that I was looking up for my
yeah.
picks of this year, and a lot of them are like tied to Netflix.
But there was the movie that was on. Was it on Netflix for like? It was in theaters for a week, and then they just parsed it over to Netflix. Oh, I can't remember the name of it. But The Irishman was kind of the same deal, where it had
That's
like
what
this
I was thinking of.
limited
Yeah.
release, and then it was on. So yeah, so I think that pre-COVID anyway, there was kind of this understanding that as long as it was in theaters briefly, that it would be eligible. But I don't know how that's changed as a result of everything that's been happening for the last couple of years. So I could not say for sure.
Because I was thinking like my top pick for animated would probably be The Mitchells versus the Machines.
Oh yeah?
Like that one was just incredible. I don't know if you
No,
got
no.
to watch that one, but like just animation alone. But I mean, it'll probably go to like Encanto or something like that, right? Like it's gonna be Disney.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't
But
even mention this, but I watched one, Summit of the Gods, which is
oh,
I think it might be Japanese because I think it's an anime. Well, it's actually, as I recall, it is based on a famous anime about this journalist who tries to find this famous climber who's trying to do the southwest approach on Everest back in like the 80s or 90s or something like that. But that was good. I mean, the animation itself wasn't astounding, but it was a good movie that was also animated, and so yet another one for the list.
yeah, yeah, exactly. The never-ending pile. I promise that I will start watching movies again and
Oh,
relieve your burden.
you're okay. You're totally fine.
Yeah, but I
And
mean,
yet,
what are your feelings about the Oscars in general? Because I know, like, some people it's all like, oh,
oh
it's just all for
yeah,
show, and because, like, I don't know.
no,
For me, it's a celebration, but now it just kind of, yeah, feels.
I
I don't
think
know.
the Oscars is a perfect crystallization of my love-hate relationship with Hollywood because uh, I love movies. I've always loved movies and probably always will. And yet, it's kind of like the more you know about how the sausage gets made, the
The less you want to eat it.
well, yeah, just I mean, I remember having this experience because I knew a guy who worked for the Oscar Mayer Wiener Company, and it's like I was never a big hot dog guy before that, but then like after that, it's like, oh, I can't
Can't
eat these
ever
things
again.
because I know what happens.
Uh,
And so it's kind of like the more you hear about all of the behind the scenes drama, and I think some people might even feel this way with the Me Too movement, right? Is you find out about what happens behind the scenes and with some of the people, and the more you find out about these famous people,
yeah.
it sometimes becomes really difficult. And of course, there's also the tendency for the Oscars to be a soapbox for various causes here and there to the point where, nothing wrong with voicing a cause, but if that's what, if the focus turns to that instead of the movies, it can be very divisive. And I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, honestly, the only reason I pay attention to the Oscars right now is because I've got an annual party that I go to
Oh,
that,
fun.
and so it's a reason to get together. And I wrote about this, so I might as well just say, like, T.C.
Yeah.
Christensen,
Oh,
a local
sick.
director. Yeah, so he and I are friends, and I played in a band with his son Tanner several years ago, and so I'm kind of a family friend, and I'll get together for their Oscar party once a year, and it's like the Oscars are almost kind of, do we really have to watch this while we're here? I'd rather just shoot the bull with my friends,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, but there's still movie magic, and you still really love it, and it kind of inspires you to be creative,
Yeah.
and so yeah, so that's why I say it's a very love-hate type of relationship, and I might use a little bit of a sarcastic, cynical tone, but I mean, I like a lot of these prestige type movies, and a lot of times they really are the movies that deserve the accolades and the attention and the awards and all that kind of thing. In a lot of cases, not every case. I mean, I definitely think that there are movies that get overlooked because they don't have the same kind of push and marketing behind them.
For sure.
But no, I mean, Being the Ricardos is a really good movie, and Licorice Pizza has some really great moments, and Tender Bar, and then just, I mean, Belfast is just really this incredible movie, and these are all kind of consciously prestige movies. I think part of the reason I like Coda so much is because it's not. I don't
It
get the
wasn't
sense
setting
that
out
it's.
to get that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's more of a indie movie, like The Farewell or like Hunt for the
Yeah.
Wilder People, that I just, it just kind of came out of nowhere, and I adore it, and Sing Street, and so in a way I would rather see those movies succeed the most, but I still enjoy these others that,
Yeah.
and I guess, and again, maybe that's why I feel more cynical towards stuff like House of Gucci, because it feels like, well, the formula is we're going to take a true story with some really vivid characters who have dramatic, money and wealth, and they're well known, and we're going to do these biopics about these people, and that's our ticket to accolades and stuff. And so while they're good and they obviously have really fantastic performances, there's also kind of the feeling like it's more calculated. It's the difference between text and context, because you can't evaluate these movies just based on the movie itself. You have to take all these other considerations into it, and so once you factor all that stuff in together, there's stuff that you like, and there's stuff that kind of turns you off, and so I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, it's one of the interesting parts of the job, really. Okay. Well, Danny, it has been
Yes.
good to have you back.
I'm so
am-
glad I got to join in on this, and I'm really glad that I have these new recommendations. I'm excited to jump back into movie watching and the discussions and all of it. It'll be
Yeah.
fun to see how this year wraps up.
Oh, definitely, and maybe it's kind of a teaser for our next episode. The plan is to jump into, as we were talking about, we're going to do West Side Story. Should be able to see the new Spider-Man movie. Plus, we're going to talk about some of our favorite Christmas movies. So look forward to that. I'm excited to talk about that stuff.
Oh, it'll be so much fun.
Nice. And in the meantime, wherever you are, thank you so much for listening, and let us know how you feel. If you got some prestigious movies you would like to recommend, or some non-prestigious ones that you think deserve consideration, let us know. And in the meantime, have a great holiday season. Be safe, and we'll talk to you soon.